What's up, guys? Today is all about stare downs. When you get in that guy's face, whether it's at weigh-ins, whether it's right before the fight, when you have to look somebody square in the eye and decide how much does this moment matter? Is it going to make a difference in the fight outcome? Should you be training it? Should you be thinking about it before the fight? So today, guys, it's all about stare downs. All right, guys, 40 plus fights in my career. I think I'm closer to 45 now. So I have had a lot of stare downs. When you go, okay, we have the weigh-ins and then we have the actual fight. Probably close to 100 with the fights that I've lost out on now where I've actually done weigh-ins. Fights that have fallen through. But yeah, probably 100 plus. So today I want to talk with you about stare downs, how important I think they are, whether they will affect the outcome of the fight at all, and very interestingly, something that happened in my Glory title fight, my first one, in the stare down, which I didn't know about until after the outcome of the fight. I found out a couple months later, but what Mosab Amrani, my opponent, thought when we did the stare down, what was going through his head and what he relayed to the Glory director after. And this is a great episode to stick around for if you are an active fighter or if you're thinking about being a fighter, because let me tell you, doing that stare down is one of the more intimidating moments of the whole fight camp. And if you don't have your head wrapped around it, you don't have yourself sort of mentally prepared for the moment, yes, it might affect you. So let's get everything really started, guys. Although obviously I just stated that stare downs to me are quite important, which I guess kind of ultimately answers the question, should you be concerned about stare downs? Should they affect you? And for me, obviously, yes, I do let them affect me to a certain extent. I have a lot of respect for guys like Canelo, who I've seen a number of times. He's across from his opponent, but instead of making eye contact, he just does this. He just looks down. And it doesn't have anything to do with looking them in the eyes, and I don't know why this is. It might just be a psychology thing. He goes, I don't want to look them in the eyes because I don't want to have my mind being fooled by the intensity that they're using to stare me down. It doesn't really matter at all. And I'd say that's very true. It does not matter how scary your opponent looks, how confident they look when they look in your eyes. But what I do like about stare downs is sometimes I'll be across from the guy, I'll look him in the eyes, and I'll go, he's not going to win this fight. He's already defeated. I can tell by looking in his eyes. And that is a good feeling. What's not a good feeling is when somebody stares right back and you're like, whew, okay, he's ready to bring it tomorrow. Or right now, if the fight's about to go down. So I actually have a technique that I use now that my dad actually gave to me years ago, because I used to actually look guys in the eyes, look deep into their eyes and see what was happening there. But then one time my dad said, you know, give them the intense look, but you don't need to focus yourself. You don't really need to see what's happening. So what I do, what my dad taught me to do, is take two eyes and look into one of theirs. And it's just something about it being a little bit more intense, a little bit scarier. We'll see if I can show you guys here. When I'm staring in at the camera and I kind of just look straight in the middle with both eyes, I'm kind of locking onto two different spots. It just, for me, doesn't feel that intense. But when I take two eyes and I focus in on one spot, I don't know if there's any difference to you guys. I'm just looking at one little spot and I really stare in. To me, that makes a massive difference. And the thing I like about it is I don't actually have to look at them. Like, you can have something in front of your face, a book, and you can just kind of blank out and stare at a single letter and not really be looking at it. That's what I do in my stare downs. So I'm giving them all my intensity, but I'm really not focusing on what they're doing. I'm not focusing on how scary they look or how weak they look. The only times I really notice is if I see somebody blink. If they're blinking or if they kind of shy away, because that's overall movement. But I'm not really looking at their eyes. It's just something that I prefer not to do. I used to look right into people's eyes, and then I went, I don't really like the way it feels after if I leave and I go, whoo, that guy was scary looking, or he had something extra in his eyes. And that's what happened when I fought for my Glory title. I went to the middle of the ring and I did what I was just telling you guys. Two eyes, look into one, and I stared at Mosab. I just looked right through him. I'm not looking at him, I'm looking through him. And I got information after the fight that Mosab felt in that moment like he was going to lose. It was in the stare down that he already recognized that I was going to win the fight. Now, I'm not hearing this directly from Mosab. I heard this from somebody within Glory who was high up, who told me that after. They said Mosab told us in that stare down he felt like Gabriel was so intense and he was there to win and I couldn't have beat him. Obviously he came out and he gave his best effort, but ultimately it didn't happen. And that's my concern with actually staring into somebody's eyes and trying to read their resolve, trying to read how strong they're going to be, how resilient they're going to be. It might backfire on you, but looking through somebody's eyes and not really focusing, number one, gives the impression that you are not scared to stare them down. Whenever I see Canelo look down, I'm always kind of like, oh, he's not willing to look them in the eyes. Is there a reason? Is he scared? Obviously not for Canelo, but for a lot of people, I wonder that. And number two, as I look through that one eye that I'm staring at, when I look through it, any movement that I see, any blinking, any shudder, any split second where I see him hesitate or give up that eye stare, I go, okay, he's broken. I'm not going to move. I'm going to sit there and stare until I get broken up by the official who's in between us. But if he breaks, he blinks first, I go, he doesn't like this. So ultimately, I do believe that stare downs do matter. They do make a difference. Not to everybody, of course. There's some guys who they could come in, they could look down, they could look up, but they're always going to perform the same. But for some people whose mental resolve is not as strong as others, I believe they can weaken, they can crack in that weigh-in stare down or that pre-fight stare down. So what should you do about it? What can you do to prepare? Well, obviously, if you need to, if you really feel like it's going to be a sticking point for you, which some people have an issue with the stare downs, you can get your teammates. You'll have trouble not laughing, I guarantee you, but you can get teammates come up and just stare down in your face and you can practice. Or you can look at yourself in a mirror. Both of those are fine, but I like the idea the most of visualizing it. You guys have heard me talk about visualization. Visualize your opponent walking up and you getting right in their face and go through that whole situation 10, 15, 20 times in your head leading up to the actual moment. Then when it happens, you can look straight through them and you're not going to be shocked by anything that happens. That's just my opinion, guys. We could get into a whole other conversation now about, in the stare downs, people pushing you and things like that. That's never happened to me. I've never had anybody push me. I've never had anybody be rude or show disrespect to me at the stare downs. It's just basically an intensity thing. And in my opinion, just something for the camera, something for the fans out there to just get a moment where the intensity kind of picks up. But I guess ultimately for me with my stare down technique, looking through one eye, I give the impression that I'm intense and it really matters. But overall to me, no, it doesn't really matter unless I see this guy crack or break. If I sort of shudder in the middle of it, I kind of looking in and I have a split second where I kind of blink and I'm like, oh, what? It doesn't affect me on fight night. It's not going to make a difference whatsoever. But here's the thing. A lot of times in fights, it's all about how you perceive a moment. You could see somebody across, maybe your opponent, across the hotel for the very first time. And if you let it get to you, it matters. It really does. But everything is just inside your head. And a lot of times overthinking things and really trying to decide what they mean, it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of energy, in my opinion. So stare downs. It all comes down to whether you think they're important or if they're not. I really like the technique I've been taught of looking through somebody, not really giving them the actual focus, just staring through them like they mean nothing to me. It works for me. I would suggest you guys try that if you're not somebody who really wants to do the stare down. You really want to look deep into them and see what their eyes and their soul and everything contains. That's just my advice. It's worked very well for me. Guys, stare downs, what do you think? Important, not important? Throw it down in the comments below for me. Let me know. Let's get a conversation happening. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, you think it's going to be helpful, please give it a like. If you haven't already, join the channel, get subscribed. As always, guys, train hard. I'll see you back here soon for another video.